Hello everyone. Today we're going to be learning how to make pinch pot monsters out of clay. So the materials that you're going to need are a space to work with, and I have a piece of cardboard here that I'm covering up my desk with so that my desk doesn't get super dirty while I'm working inside. And you're going to need your clay. So I have this clay in a plastic bag so that it can remain nice and wet so that I can keep using it. And now you might not be using the same kind of clay as me. I am going to be using a more traditional type of clay, one that would be normally used in, you would form your object and then fire it in a kiln. But you could also be using air dry clay or some other kind of polymer clay, one that you would just bake in the oven or just let dry in the air. But today I'm going to be using a more traditional clay. This specifically is a porcelain. So in addition to that, if you're using the traditional clay, you're going to need a bowl of water so that you can kind of keep things moist while you're working, and some slip. So slip is basically just really wet clay. You can kind of see it moving around in there. Just a really wet clay that allows pieces of clay to come together. And we'll talk more about how to attach pieces of clay in a little bit. You're going to need some tools. So in order to make those score marks, which we're going to talk about, I have a fork. You can just use any sort of dinner fork. And then I also have various clay tools. So this is a needle tool and a metal rib, which is really good for smoothing out areas. And you can also, because we're making monsters, you can have a sketchbook nearby and go ahead and sketch out your ideas if you want to do that, but I think I'm just going to kind of jump right into it so that I don't need to do that. Now with this traditional clay, it's going to go through 5 different stages. So right now it's in its first stage. It's plastic or wet clay, you can say. And you can see that it's really easy to mold, and that's what that word plastic means. It means that it's easy to work with, it's still wet, and you can mold it to any shape that you want, and it'll just stay there. It doesn't really bounce back. The next stage is going to be leather hard. So that's whenever it's been drying out for a little bit, and it's going to get a little bit more stiff. It's not going to bend as easy or move as much as you want it to. Now leather hard is the stage that you're really going to want your pieces to be before you start attaching them to each other. But for the purposes of this video, we're probably going to kind of bypass that and still work with this plastic clay. And this clay isn't super wet either. It's already a little tiny bit dry. And so after leather hard, it becomes greenware. That's whenever it is completely dry, but it has still not been fired. So this will be basically as hard as a rock, but it will also be very fragile. So if I had a piece that was sticking up like this and it were greenware, if I were to move it or bang it against something, it would just break off, and that's not necessarily what we want to be doing. After that is bisqueware. So that's the first time that you fire it, and it goes through a process with a really big word called vitrification. Now vitrification basically means the heat is interacting with the molecules inside of the clay and causing it to harden like a rock. And after it's bisque fired, it will be, even if I had a little piece just like that one that I was just telling you about, like this, even if I were to like hit it or like bang it against something, it still could possibly break, but it will be a lot stronger and it won't be able to break as easily. Now, the last one is glaze fired. So after you've bisqued it, you're going to cover it in glaze, which is basically a type of paint almost for clay where it turns to glass. So the main ingredient in most glazes is silica, which whenever it is applied to clay and is fired, it turns into glass so that it kind of creates that shiny texture that you see on all of these bowls and things like that. So once you're ready to start making your pinch pot monster, you're going to take a chunk of clay, maybe about this size, and take maybe about half of it or a third of it. It really depends on how big you want it to be. And I'm going to kind of mush it around a little bit, maybe use a little bit of water because it's drying out just a tiny bit. Just mush it around a little bit, maybe a little bit more water. And you're just going to want to form it into basically a perfect sphere. So I'm going to kind of slap it around a little bit and make sure that it gets into a ball shape like I want. And now, what you want to do is you want to take your thumb and you want to go straight into it. So I'm going straight into it, right into the center. Okay, and then you're going to take your other fingers, you're going to go around the sides of it, just like this, and creating a wall. See how it's already opened up a lot? You're going to go around and create an outer wall. Now it's important that you are maintaining the right angle as you're going around, because you don't want to end up with a disc. So if you take a piece of clay and you put your thumb inside it and you're not going perpendicular like this, if you're going like this, you're going to end up with a disc. See how that just kind of flattened out and you don't really have a bowl shape? You want to end up with a bowl shape just like this. Now this is going to be the mouth of our monster. So I'm pretty happy with the shape of that. Okay, so everything is all smoothed out right around the rim there. It's looking really, really good. So I'm smoothing out on the back there too. And so next up, what we're going to do is we're going to attach all of the appendages. So first off, you want to make all of them. So I think my monster is probably going to have 3 eyeballs, 2 arms, and some little tiny legs that he's going to be standing on, and maybe a tongue and some teeth. I think that's going to look really, really cool. So for the eyeballs, I'm going to take just a little bit of clay, just like this. I'm going to try to make my 3 eyeballs the exact same size too. So I'm trying to get some of just a little bit of clay, make them the same size. So I already got 2. Go ahead and set this aside so you can see a little bit better what I'm working with. And let's make that 3rd eye. It's a little bit bigger than the other one, so let's just take off just a little bit of clay. And that's the wonder of this clay, is that you can really just work with it and make it whatever size and shape you want. And if you make it a little bit too big, take some off. If you make it a little bit too small, add some more clay to it. It's really an amazing material. So I've got my 3 eyeballs here, and now I'm going to make some arms. So let's see. So I'm going to start with a sphere again, just like the eyeballs, but then I'm going to roll it just like this to kind of start elongating them. So they're already starting to get longer like that. Now it's getting a little bit dried out and cracked, so I'm going to just take a little bit of my water and use that to smooth it out and to keep it hydrated while I'm working with it. Okay, that's a pretty long arm, but I think I kind of like that. That's nice. So I'll make a second one. I think I'm actually going to preemptively put a little bit of water on that, just to maybe put some on my hands so that they're not getting dried out as well. Okay, so I got 2 arms that are about the same size, and I'll finish, and I'll make up the hands and finish those up here in a second. I said I wanted little tiny legs, so let's take just a little tiny bit of clay and make some tiny little legs, just like this. We're gonna have short little legs, just like that. So I've got one leg. Let's go ahead and make a second one. And you're gonna want really flat pieces on them, just like that, so that they're easier to stick onto your piece whenever you're done. Let's see. Actually, I can use another one of my tools to make sure that these are the same size. So they're the same size this way, but now I want them to be the same size this way. And if I pinch it, I'm gonna pinch it off here, it gets not really clean like that. So I'm gonna actually use my metal rib tool that I have, or you could use like a knife or a butter knife or something like that, and just slice it right off. Now I have two pieces that are exactly the same size. Look at that. Okay, so now with these arms, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make hands on the end of them. I'm just going to take some of that material and squish it, just like this, so that it's flattening out, just like that. Use a little bit of water because it's drying out just a little bit. We're going to make some fingers. So I'm going to go back to using my metal rib tool or your knife or whatever you're using. I'm just going to make some fingers just like this. He's going to have little tiny claws because he's a monster. And just like that. Made that little. Okay, and I want another arm that looks pretty much similar to that, so I'm going to again flatten it out. And use my tool. Okay. I've got two arms with hands and claws on them. Really cool. And again, I have that flat part right there. Okay, so my arms are done. Now with the feet, I want to do something pretty similar, but they're really going to, because this is so heavy, it's not going to be able to stand on top of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have the feet kind of dangling out just like this, like he's sitting up. So I'm going to form this into like a little tiny bit of a foot. Just like that. Like he's sitting. I'm going to give him some toes with my tool. Give him some little tiny toes like that. So that's a foot that's done. Let's go ahead and do another one. Okay. So now I got 2 feet that are pretty much the same. Okay, now for the eyes, what I'm going to do is, this doesn't really look like an eye right now because it's just a sphere, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the bottom part of this, or I could even use a pencil, so I'll just go ahead and use a pencil because that's probably what you have at home. And I'm going to stick it straight in there, just like this. Maintaining that sphere shape. Maybe just wiggle it around just a little bit. And now, it looks like he's got an actual eyeball there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on all 3 of them. Okay, so now I got my 3 eyeballs. Now, and we'll work on teeth in a minute. But what I'm going to show you first is how to attach it to your monster. So I think the arms are going to go right on the side, just like this. His legs are going to go right here. And I am going to make a tongue, I think. I think that would be kind of cool. and I'll make that one in a minute with the teeth. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out where I want them. So let's say I want it about there. That's a pretty good space. I'm going to take my fork or my needle tool or whatever I'm using. I'm just going to kind of make a mark in the clay to where it's going to be. So it's going to go about there. So you see I made this little mark right there. And then we're going to do this. So this is our score, slip, and stick. So there are 3 parts to attaching clay to clay. So the first thing we need to do is score it. So that means just making little marks in it. So I'll show you. I'm going to take this needle tool and make a bunch of little tiny marks in it, just like this. And you can do the same exact thing with a fork or something else like that as well. So you can see that it's all marked up, nice and rough. I'm going to do this exact same thing on the arm on the inside. That's why you want that flat piece on all of your appendages here. So let's go ahead and score that up. And the reason that we score is that whenever clay is already smooth like this, if you try to stick it to itself, there's nothing to hold on to. So what the scoring does is it kind of takes pieces that are like this, so this is not going to stick well together, and it makes it like this, almost like a Velcro. So if pieces are like this, and there's material there and roughness, they're going to stick into each other like this, and they won't be able to be pulled apart as easily. So, but also just adding it straight on there like that is not going to be enough. So that's why we need the slip, the second part, slip. So we already scored, now we're going to slip. So slip is basically just really, really wet clay. So you can kind of see my slip in there. It's almost like water, but there is clay inside it as well. So that's going to kind of act like glue. So not only are you roughing it up, but you're also adding glue so that it really just kind of tightens it up just like that. And then it really, really can't get it anywhere else. So I'm going to use my little paintbrush here and just get a little bit of slip on my brush and add it to both sides. So you want to add slip to both sides. Just like that. And then I'm going to put pressure on the inside here and adding pressure here so that we stick it together. You'll see it kind of oozing out a little bit right there. That's a good thing because that means that it's really locking into place. You'll see I'm holding it like this and it's not even falling apart. It's really, really good and nicely bonded, just like that. Okay? So you're really going to want to do that same process for all of your appendages. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward this part so you can see me kind of scoring and slipping everything and putting it all together. But I'll come back and I'll talk to you again whenever you are finished scoring and slipping, or whenever I'm finished scoring and slipping. See you in a sec. Okay, so I finished my monster, basically. He's looking really, really cute right now, but, you know, he wants to be a monster, so let's make him a little bit scary. So let's go ahead and make some really awesome jagged teeth that can go up here, and give him a really long, kind of gross tongue, but you know, that's what monsters are, a little bit gross, and a little bit scary. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so unfortunately I lost all of the footage where I put on the teeth and the tongue, but really it was the exact same process as putting on the arms and the legs and the eyeballs. And so basically what I did is I took just for the teeth, I took just a little tiny bit of clay and rolled it between my thumb and forefinger, just like this, to kind of get that point. But again, remember, just like with all of the arms and legs, you need a flat spot right at the top to score and slip and put them on just like that. And so yeah, this is my completed monster. Isn't it really, really cool? Now it's all nice and menacing and not squishy like it was with before it had the teeth. It's not going to be messed with. He might be messing with you. Just make it your own. There's no set in stone way to make the monster, and that's really the beauty of working with clay, is that it has that plasticity, that moldability, that ability to be formed into whatever shape that you want it to be. So your monster can be anything you want. If you wanted to replace the arms with wings, you could definitely do that. Or if you wanted to add spikes on his back, or if you wanted 1 eye, 2 eyes, mine has 3 eyes, or if you wanted 15 eyes, whatever you want. It can really be up to you. And that's really why I love clay so much. Now unfortunately this is traditional clay, so usually it would be, I would let it dry and become greenware because I'm finished with it. And then I would bisque fire it, it would become hard as a rock, and then I would glaze fire it with the glazes on it to make it really colorful and stand out and really become its own thing. But because it's during the quarantine here in 2020, I don't have access to a kiln. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to let it become greenware, totally dry out, become greenware, and I'm just going to paint it with acrylic paint. So it's not going to be as cool as if it were completely fired in the kiln, but I think we're still going to get a really awesome result. So I'm going to go ahead and let this dry and become greenware, and I'll come back in a few hours or a day or so, however long it takes to let this dry out, and I'll see you then.
The next day.
Alright, welcome back everybody. I've got my finished monster. It's been just a couple of days actually since I made it, and you can see that it's nice and hard. I can't bend it anymore, move it around anymore. It's lost that plasticity like we were talking about because all of the water and moisture that was inside the clay has come out, and now it's nice and hard. Now this is now greenware, that one stage of clay that we were talking about, where it's really fragile. So I am going to be very careful with this because it is not fired, and I'm not going to fire it because I don't have access to a kiln, but that's okay. And if you're working with that air dry clay or a polymer clay or something like that, then you would also have, that is just kind of dries in the air and it's perfectly fine. It's not going to break or be brittle as much as this traditional clay is going to be. So everything stayed on, which is really good because of our score, slip, and stick method that we used. And so now we're going to paint it. And we're just going to keep it in this greenware state, and we're going to be really, really careful with it. Put it on a shelf later whenever it's done. It's going to be awesome. So what I'm going to be using to paint it is going to be, we're going to be using acrylic paint. So I've got my acrylic paints set up right here. So I've got my primary colors, my yellow, red, and blue, and then I have a black paint and a white paint. And those are, go ahead and go look at our channel for Lexi's video, and she will teach you all about how to mix colors and how they work together to make every single color in the entire rainbow, or any color that you can even think of really, with just these 5 colors. So that's a really good video. Go watch that if you want to learn how to mix the colors and make whatever color you want, but I'm going to be using these colors today. So now it's time to think about what colors I want my monster to be. So I think I want his body to be green maybe I'll make his arms blue and his legs, maybe we'll make them orange. So just be working on this. So I'll see you in a minute after I have painted just the body, because I'm just going to paint the body first and let it completely dry so that I'm not having to get paint all over my fingers while I'm trying to hold it and stuff. So I'm going to paint just the body first, and then I'm going to let it dry. So I'll see you back after I've painted the body and I've let it dry. Okay, so I just finished painting my monster's body. You can see it's all green all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and let this dry. I missed a little spot, so I'm probably going to touch that up in a second. But I'm going to go ahead and let this dry, and then I will be able to actually hold on to the body while I paint the rest of the body parts. So I'll see you back in a couple minutes after this dries. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes, really not that long, for this acrylic paint to dry, and it is completely dry, so I can now hold it without getting paint all over my fingers. And so I'm going to go ahead and start painting everything else. So I probably will start with the inside of the mouth just to get that all finished out, and then go into everything else. I mean, it doesn't really matter what order you do it in, as long as you do the body first, just so you can hold on to it while you're doing it. Okay, so we were lucky that we only lost this one tooth, and I feel pretty good about that. You know, we just lost one little tooth. It's not even the whole thing. You can see that that little piece had too big of a crack in it, and I accidentally hit it with the paintbrush and it knocked out. So that's okay. I think I'm just gonna go ahead and see you again whenever this is completely done, and we can talk about the finished product. Alright, see you in a bit.
Later.
Okay, so here's the final product. We got our monster completely and totally painted, and I think he turned out pretty awesome. He's got his blue arms, orange legs, green body, slightly yellow teeth, and his white eyes, his red tongue. You can see that the entire thing is painted all the way around. Really, really awesome, super fun project to do. And I really, really hope that you guys try this at home, whether you're working with, again, this traditional clay, or you're working with air dry clay or polymer clay, whatever it is. And if you're using those other clays, the polymer and or air dry, I highly recommend that you just use a straight white so that you can paint it and customize it yourself. And this is not even again, this is completely customizable. You can make your monster look however you want. You can paint it however you want. If I wanted to, I could add some spots on it to make it give it that kind of texture. I could have made the one arm one color, one arm the other color. It's really up to you what you want your monster to look like. This is by no means a perfect monster. This is by no means the only way to do it. So it's really up to you. Go ahead and make this at home. I'm really excited. If you are following us on our Facebook page, if you can also upload a picture there, that would be fantastic. And I hope to see your monsters on there. Thanks, and have a great day.